What's going on, guys? This is Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ. Today's episode is start or sit for week 7. Week 7, people. Fantasy football is flying. Time is flying. Congratulations to the guys that are 6-0 and the people who are 3-3, and I'm sorry for the people who are 1-5, 0-6. You know, it's a rough year. The fantasy football, you know, it's been weird this week and last week also. You know, a lot of guys jumping up out of the rankings, and you know, a lot of guys dropping down in rankings. But I got a lot of guys that we're going to be talking about with, you know, starting, and then a lot of guys need to pump the brakes on. You know, they had a breakout week last week, so it's kind of like, oh yeah, let me go pick them up off the waiver wire and start them this week. No, we're going to touch on that. You know, a couple guys that you just need to flat out sit, hit the bench, and pump the brakes on. So let's get right into the episode. Now, Dion / Derrick Henry. Let me touch on this first, and I need to say this. Derrick Henry, you are a disappointment. The biggest flop of the year goes to Derrick Henry. This guy had the preseason hype, even before preseason hype, jumped up in a couple of rankings, thought this guy was going to be bulldozing people over, you know, with the new offense, but he has not produced. He is droppable at this point, honestly. I mean, he shouldn't be in anybody's starting lineups until he shows some type of signs of life or whatever. But it doesn't look good for Derrick Henry. And Dion Lewis, he's been struggling because of the Titans struggling on offense. You know, from Mariota, from Corey Davis, the whole entire offense has just been struggling. So that's why Dion Lewis' numbers last week weren't as great. It was just a game plan thing that they needed to throw the ball. They were playing from behind. The offense was just flat out terrible. They couldn't get anything going. So Dion Lewis this week, he gets the bench also, and Derrick Henry, you get the bench until next year, 2023. I don't fucking know. But Derrick Henry, what the hell? You need to get on track. Next up, Lamar Miller. He had 45 yards. I mean, he had 9 yards receiving. It's kind of like it's not working with this guy right now. He's a little bit off. It's very underwhelming. Another boring week for Lamar Miller owners, and it's to the point where it's kind of hard putting this guy in the lineup, and he's the starting running back in Houston. You got freaking Blue trying to get into some touches, and Blue almost put up more points than him last week, actually, if I think about it, but it's not looking good for Lamar Miller owners. He gets the bench this week. I mean, maybe he can get something going. I see they're trying to use him more out the backfield, you know, catching balls out the backfield, but I'm not putting this guy even in my flex this week. Sorry, you get the bench. Next up, we got Andrew Luck going against Buffalo. He had 301, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions last week. I like the matchup this week against Buffalo. Andrew Luck is still finding the end zone, even with the receiver core that he has, even with his top receiver, T.Y. Hilton, out with a chest injury. So it's kind of like he's making the best of what he has, so he's still managing to find the end zone. I'm starting him this week and the week after that. It looks like they're going to be cruising into that bye week, looking pretty good and in good shape with Andrew Luck owners. I mean, they're not winning games, but still Andrew Luck is still producing great points, like 39 points, 40 points. He's lighting up the scoreboard, people. So Andrew Luck gets to start this week and next week. The week after this week, they have Oakland, so that's even better matchup than this week against Buffalo. So Andrew Luck for the next 2 weeks, you get the start. I like this guy, Sony Michel. Now, he gets to start until further notice. He has been producing great numbers for fantasy owners. For the last 3 games, he has found the end zone. The last 3 games, he has put up more than 15 touches. So it looks like he's getting the ball at a good, decent temperature, even with James White there. So I'm loving Sony Michel going into week in and week out. He's a solid, I'll say a solid high-end RB2, a solid flex play, obviously, because Sony Michel, he's going to get the ball. A lot of people were getting him off the waiver off of week 3. It's like kind of crazy the reward that people are getting from getting Sony Michel off the waiver wire so early in the season. I mean, nobody's seen this coming. He had an injury, he had a knee injury that he had that wasn't too cleared up the last couple of weeks, but the last 3 weeks he's been putting in a lot of work, and I'm really happy that Rex Burkhead is on IR and giving the kid a shot. This guy, is going to get the start this week. I love the matchup. I love how the Patriots are working him and White as a duo running back. So they're still producing solid numbers. So, Sony Michel, James White, you both get the start for me. Next up, Michael Crabtree. He's been kind of quiet, but he had his best game yet last week. He had 93 yards, 6 receptions, 1 touchdown. That's his best game yet on the Ravens. So, I like the matchup this week against the Saints. Saints haven't exactly been too great with wide receivers lined up on the outside. So, Crabtree's going to be looking to eat a lot of balls on the outside, do what he does. I mean, the guy has the matchup this week. I'm loving it, and I hope Flacco can see him at least once into the end zone to make his fantasy impact relevant. Now, John Brown, I know you're saying that he's on the other side, but he's the deep ball threat. He's more of a playmaker. So I like this matchup this week with the Ravens and Saints. I like how John Brown has the opportunity to hit the end zone a couple of times, and so is Michael Crabtree. Really liking that game, even if, you know, Crabtree comes out with 5 catches and 63 yards and a touchdown. That's still good to me, you know what I mean? I need him to see the end zone this week, being that the Saints are like a beat-up defense. They're not exactly great. Next up, Jarvis Landry. Now, it's really disappointing that I gotta sit this guy this week. It just, ever since Baker came into the mix of being the starter quarterback, Jarvis Landry's points and stats have been declining. He had 2 catches for 11 yards last week, and that's on 9 targets. So only 6 of those balls were catchable, to be fair, but still, it's like he's seeing a lot of targets, but it's not getting to him. So it looks like Baker's looking elsewhere. I mean, last week, Jarvis was 3rd in targets on the team, behind Callaway, and it doesn't look like Jarvis and Baker are making a great connection, not that great of a chemistry. And I understand that the Chargers are a tough defense. You know, they're definitely a top 10 defense, but still, being every week that you see a decline in Jarvis Landry, I'm going to have to sit him this week until I see some type of life between Baker and Landry, at least finding the end zone. We know Jarvis isn't known for the end zone. He's good for 90+ catches and, you know, 1,000 yards maybe, but very little touchdowns. I think he had like 4 touchdowns last year with his 93 catches. So actually, I mean, he had like 110+ catches, if I'm not mistaken. It was him and then Larry Fitzgerald. So I know Landry's not exactly, you know, the plug and play guy to see the touchdowns, but it's just looking like it's not a great situation for Jarvis Landry this week or the week after that until Baker and Landry make some type of connection. They're just not gelling right now. I don't know what it is. I mean, Jarvis is getting the targets, but he's not getting, you know, catchable balls. So he gets the bench this week. Man, oh man, Jordan Howard, very frustrating. He had an opportunity to make himself fantasy relevant last week, but he fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line. Can't do that, man. And it looks like it was the Cohen show once again, and Tariq Cohen did his thing. It doesn't look like he's slowing down. I mean, the snap counts are there, and the percentage and opportunity and touches that he's getting more than Howard is there. So it looks evident that Cohen's going to be going ahead with the more reliable start, you know, if you have him as a flex into your plug and play, with Jordan Howard being the question of should I start this guy this week. It doesn't help his case that he has the Patriots coming up this week. So unfortunately, Jordan Howard, you got to get the bench, man, until we see some type of change. I know it's week to week. You know, it can change in game plan where you want to run the ball down the throw or whatever. But the Cohen show is working right now. I'm loving what this guy's doing. He's getting the ball. He's very elusive. He's even getting goal line touches. So it's kind of hard to see Jordan Howard being that guy when you got Cohen in the backfield taking all those touches, taking opportunities. I mean, Jordan Howard's good, you know, if the Bears get on the 1-yard line. We all know they're going to go to Jordan Howard, but do you want to play that gamble this week and he puts up 6 points again, 7 points again, especially to be in your RB2 spot? Some people even have him as a RB1 and they have no other option at running back, but Jordan Howard, you got to get the bench this week, man. Brandon Cooks, San Francisco, they got this week. He had 2 catches for 53 yards. I mean, not exactly a great performance last week against Denver, but to be fair, it was snowing and Goff was also struggling with the weather also. He was wearing those gloves, you know. Usually we don't see Goff wearing gloves, but being that it was so cold, I mean, the game plan had to be to run the ball. Gurley had 208, so obviously they weren't going to be throwing the ball that much, being that it was freezing cold in Denver. So that was reasonable. I expect Brandon Cooks to come back, you know, with a bounce back game, even with, you know, Cooper Kupp missing sometimes. So that only allows him to see more targets. Him and Robert Woods are basically the go-to guys. I know Josh Reynolds will also be out there, but I'm not seeing Goff leaning on Josh Reynolds just yet. I don't believe that there's that much trust there to where he could trust Josh Reynolds as much as he trusted Kupp. So Brandon Cooks will absorb some of those targets, and I'm pretty sure that they got the better matchup this week with San Fran. So Cooks is looking to have a bounce back week. I have my full faith in Brandon Cooks this week to light it up once again. I don't expect them to have a game that he had last week. Again, with the weather, that's what affected most of the game plan that game. So this week, you get to start Brandon Cooks. Do your damn thing. If you haven't heard, Devontae Freeman is now on IR. He will miss some time, and being that Ito Smith is available in 91% of the leagues, he's probably the hottest running back right now to go grab. He will definitely be on the goal line. He scored in the last 3 games, putting up relevant fantasy points, so it's definitely a good plug and play there into a flex position to go pick up Smith. And Tevin Coleman still there, I understand that, but Tevin Coleman and Smith are probably going to do a split, probably 50-50 or 60-40, which is still good opportunities. Smith had 13 touches last week and a touchdown on the goal line, so it looks like Smith established himself to be the goal line back there. So that is great news. Not great news for Devontae Freeman, but great news if you go pick up Smith and put him right into your flex spot this week against the Giants Monday night. I love the matchup. Giants have allowed 5 rushing touchdowns this season. We're into week 7, so this sounds like a good matchup to me. I love Smith this week as a flex, so you get to start. Next, pump the brakes, people. Pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. Just like that. Now listen, any of these guys you can start this week, and then they will burn you. You put up 3, 4, 5 points. Albert Wilson, Cole Beasley, Frank Gore, and Brock Osweiler. Like I said, you can start these guys this week and they burn you. Completely burn you. Now people need to learn and listen, man. You need to stash and be patient. They're not, oh, one breakout week and then you start them next week. It's not how that works. Football was weird last week. The Cowboys basically embarrassed the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are so scary, but Dak Prescott did his damn thing, running outside the pocket, finding Cole Beasley in the middle. But I don't see this being consistent week after week. Prove me wrong, basically. I don't think so. Cole Beasley is probably the #1 receiver there, but come on now, how hard is it to watch film, see what they did to the Jags, and stop this guy? It's easy to keep Dak contained into the pocket also. Jaguars, they just got completely exposed on that end. But being that Dak did his thing, I'm pretty impressed. But is this going to be consistent between him and Cole Beasley? Maybe not. Brock Osweiler. I heard this little weird stat that when he started for the Texans, when he got the start, he beat the Bears. When he started in Denver, he beat the Bears. He gets to start in Miami, he beats the Bears. Maybe it's just a thing he has against the Bears. Maybe it's just his specialty to expose them and basically just win the game. But let's pump the brakes. This guy had 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Pump the brakes on Brock. Now, is this going to be a week-to-week constant thing with him? No. Heavens no. Same thing with Albert Wilson. It's not going to be a constant thing week to week. It's just, you got to just stash these guys to be patient. Now, if we're talking waiver wire priority 1, I wouldn't touch any of these guys. Just, the only person I would touch was Ito Smith, which his situation is way different from any of these guys on this list. Now, Frank Gore did his thing. Congratulations. But Kenyon Drake is still in that mix. He's still in the conversation. Even though he fumbled the ball on the 1-yard line for the game winner, inches away, it doesn't take away the fact that he's still in the conversation week to week with Frank Gore there, and you got Kalen Ballage, and then you got freaking Kenyon Drake. It's just not something that's going to be week to week that he's going to be blowing up every single week. Frank Gore I'm talking about. So pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. Like I said, any of these 4 players, Cole Beasley, Albert Wilson, Brock Osweiler, and Frank Gore, they can burn you this week. Or they cannot. They can be consistent. It's just a gamble that you shouldn't be willing to take on these guys that are probably all on the waiver wire except Albert Wilson. I know guys picked him up like 2-3 weeks ago to just stash him, but it's not a plug and play just yet. Pump the brakes. So that wraps up another great episode of Real Deal Fantasy HQ. Like and subscribe for me, share the video, put your start and sit questions down below, and I'll get back to you as best as I can, as fast as I can, and I'll see you guys next week for start and sit week 8. Peace.